I'm a recovery guy. I'm a man of long-term recovery. I'm almost coming up on 8 years with no fronts and no, no early championships here. You know what I mean? So I'll take my 7 years, 10 months and ride with it, figure it out from there. By the grace of God, my I found recovery when I was 37 years old. I come from a long line of addiction. It wasn't about um, it was about when was my turn. It wasn't about an experimental type of thing. Both families hot. Um, my father's in long-term recovery. He's got 43 years in recovery, but he doesn't do traditional stuff like a lot of us do. He doesn't do 12 steps. He doesn't do celebrate recovery. He doesn't do anything like that. My dad was just old school. Went to church and took care of the family, and he made a decision, and that was it. I just thought the guy didn't get loaded the whole time. You know what I mean? I had no idea that he was in recovery until my addiction. But he always told me, he was like, "Son, that gene is inside you." You know what I mean? It's going to happen. It's not a maybe. It's not a gamble you want to take. But if you're going to take that, I'm going to support you until you can get yourself sober. And unfortunately, it took me down some bad paths. I had my first drink when I was 8 years old. I was into harder drugs by the time I was in my early teens, and gangs and judicial system followed. I did about 7 years from the city all the way to the federal level, gang disengagement, things like that. Not proud of that. I'm not a guy that gloats on gang life and prison life. All prison equates to is I sucked at my perfection. You know, by the time I was the third, fourth time going into prison, yeah, I just had to look at myself with a shadow of embarrassment. It was like, you're not good at this. Took me far too much to change your career real quick, because this is not, percentages are not there. It's not working for you. By that time, mental health dual diagnosis was already on me. I had misconceptions of what life was about. I could barely pay a phone bill. I could barely do a lot of things, just like all of us in this room, that we could find what a normal person, what we'd call a normie, could do. I couldn't produce to save my life, barely let alone save my life without another addict. So the humbling experience happened on the last day of use, which was 5/14/13. And I'm very proud of that day that I made that decision. I went in front of my father. My father finally told me who the fuck I was. He finally, instead of being that kind, kindred spirit of, son, I'm gonna help you, he told me exactly who I was and what I needed to hear. Basically told me that I was a drunken, low-life, violent, ex-con, drug addict punk, and I wasn't raised that way, and I was ruining his lineage, his name. See, my father comes from the sticks. I'm a city boy, but my dad comes from Fowler, Colorado. He's a farm boy. You know, he worked cattle. He worked the farms. He only had 2 weeks of high school, and had to put himself through night school later, became a mechanical engineer, got himself together, all these great achievements that we get in recovery. And he didn't see what I picked as a life being anything but, you know, now at 37 years old, I was starting to taint the family's name, not just affect myself, you know. And coming from a traditional Hispanic family like that, that means something to me. You know, when your monarch and your hero in your life tells you ain't shit, it's kind of time to make a change, you know. I had a problem is I've tried recovery before. I've been in and out of recovery homes. That's why in and out of different treatment facilities and all that stuff. That's why I love Mikey dearly, and I'll never leave his side, because I understand his pain. I understand where he's at, and one day he's gonna get it. He's gonna keep on pushing. He's gonna get it, and he's gonna get it good. It's gonna be a wonderful thing, and he's never gonna look back. You know, and that's one thing, is my father stuck by me, and he knew that in his heart that was what I needed. I needed that I needed that chance, somebody to believe in me. But it didn't stop with my family. I didn't realize that there was a community out there that could support me and could help. I didn't realize that I needed to hear it from a different point of view, a different perspective. You know, it pisses a lot of our families off. All of us in recovery, we're telling the same old, we're telling our fellow addicts in recovery the same old shit that our parents told us. You know what I mean? It's not like it's rocket science. Is that keep it simple, stupid? And my dad's looking at me like, you dumb son of a bitch. I've told you that about 50 million times through your life, and now it took some Irish guy from Yonkers, New York, that ended up being my first mentor to tell me exactly how the language of what I needed to hear. And he'd have that voice every morning, but he'd love me until I couldn't love myself. No, Tommy, you're gonna be a fucking superstar, kid. Let's come on, get your ass up. It's time to win the day, boy. Let's go. And that's all I needed to hear. I needed to hear somebody that was going to tell me that I wasn't less than. It wasn't a judge telling me how sociopathic I was. It wasn't a CO telling me that I needed to say 1, 2, 6, 4, 4, 4 every day. It wasn't the lies that I told my ex-wife and my daughter and my mother and everybody else, and the disappointment in their voice crackling, trying their best to believe me, but didn't believe a damn word that I said. It was those things that I needed from a recovery community that just looked at me straightly, plainly, like my dad did that first day, and tell me exactly what I needed to hear, which was the truth, which was love and respect, no stigmas, and a language that I learned that I needed to hear. Through my life in addiction, through my community, I think the hardest part is I learned to lie to myself very well. I've been telling my staff and all this kind of stuff. I go to Florida a lot, and there's a guy named Steve that's in a meeting that I go to, and he has the best quote, and I've been talking about it for weeks, and I just got back. He goes, some of my fondest memories never happened. And that's probably the best quote that I've heard in a long time. Some of my fondest memories never happened. And all these things that I had to really file cabinet in and take in. I'm a 12-stepper. I'm an NA guy. I don't know what exactly the format of this meeting is, but that's how I found recovery after TC programs. But I'll get back into my life of how I got into recovery, and it was really forced. I got arrested in 2007 on a high-speed chase. I was just that guy. A lot of my criminal charges weren't drugs and alcohol. It was off of firearms and high-speed chases, trying to get away. And the last time that I tried to do that, I ran the car up a tree. I got away from the cops. I ran the car up the tree. Unfortunately, the car was under my name and my father's name. And another unfortunate situation happened is I dropped my gun out of the shoulder holster. And they called me and basically told me, or when I called my wife, I tried to play my angle that I was going to call the car in stolen. Staff sergeant basically said, "Hey, you're going to either come and turn yourself in for what's left in this car, Tomas, or we're going to take your dad to jail." So they're sitting in my dad's living room. So I walked my happy ass back over to that spot, and I got my tail kicked, and they handcuffed me and put me back in the car, and I got 2 years for evading and eluding. Now, during that time, there was a governor named Bill Ritter in the state of Colorado, said he was going to change recidivism. He said that he was, I already made it to prison. I took my plea bargain like a dummy, didn't take the state felony charge, let the gun get dropped that I had in possession. And I went to a place called Cheyenne Mountain. When I got to Cheyenne Mountain, it was basically a war zone. It was supposed to be a therapeutic community, a TC program. But for the ones that have done prison time with a TC program, it's a pretty dangerous place, especially when it's a private prison and it's just an initiative of a governor that really is trying to make his teeth look whiter when he's smiling on TV versus the effectiveness of this program. So when we got into this program, I went from a chore checker all the way up to a unit coordinator. And I found out I had an aptitude for this field, and I had no idea. So I was responsible over about 150 to 300 guys, depending on bed space, a day. And I learned how to be a leader in recovery. I found spirituality again. I'm a Catholic by birth. My parents are Knights of Columbus. My dad's Ladies of Auxiliary. Got a damn holy water bowl right by the doorbell. As soon as you walk up to it, it's a thing. But I needed to figure out another way of life just for a minute and take the guilt out of Catholicism. And I ended up joining the native circles, and I started smudging, learning the Lakota way. Took me a big break. Also knowing you have to be sober every morning when you smudge. So you don't want to come loaded to a 7-foot Native American man, loaded off of something and act like you're clean and grab some sage and try to play it off. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be so spiritual at that point. So with that being said, I learned how to pray to Takashla and Wakatanka, basically, you know, how I looked at it is the same thing as God and Jesus, same concept. But it was the first time in a long time I was free of active addiction. It was the first time that I wasn't getting loaded in prison. I wasn't tattooing, I wasn't gangbanging, I wasn't doing the things that I would normally do on a day-to-day basis. I was living clean. And I learned how to do that job, and 2 years later, unbeknownst to me, that governor, imagine that, lied to me. I didn't get a day early. Getting out of that was my hustle to get the hell out of that prison, and I did my whole 2 years there. And when I went home, about 2.5 months later, I got indicted, and I got indicted for the gang that I was involved with, biker chapter. It was a 6-state raid, and at the time I was a Colorado enforcer, so they hooked and booked me, took me downtown. My face was on CNN, and it was a terrible experience. Mother was embarrassed, you know, my father, and I really messed up his name at that time. You know, with that whole situation that happened, I ended up in federal prison. And not, if you guys don't know about some of the stuff that happened in Colorado, there's a cornerback named Darren Williams. He was a Bronco player. He was murdered in the streets of Denver back then. And I was in there with the Crips that killed Darren Williams. I was also in there with Big Ocho from the Sinaloa cartel. That was my cell right next door to him. That was my first part of recovery. What happened at that point was I was on the phone talking to my wife, jaw-jacking her about, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, but I'm looking at X amount of years for this gun and this indictment. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I looked down at Big Ocho and I watched him do a novella. Now, this is the third general of the Sinaloa cartel that I'm in federal, and I'm a gnat on his ass compared to the chain of command on life in crime. And he was paying $2 million to do his time down in Mexico. And I looked at a man that was a fucking super villain in comic book type of thing. He was a movie character compared to what anybody's ever seen. And he was just as scared as me. He was just as beaten as me in a federal prison. When I watched him do that and kissed the picture of his kids that was under his notebook, I hung up that phone and I immediately called my dad and I told him I was done. He was like, "What are you talking about, boy?" I go, "I'm done gangbanging, Dad. Can't do this no more. No, there's no percentage in it." He goes, "Well, I could have told you that, dumbass. Told you that a long time ago that there's no percentage in this whole situation." But he was like, "Tell me what happened?" I was like, "I can't explain that on the phone. I'll tell you if I ever get home, just remind me of that. But I love you, and I'm gonna do this federal bid with no flag." He goes, "You sure you want to do that, man? That's federal prison." And I go, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to face this case as an individual man." So bond time came, and the only one that was in that courtroom, my mom couldn't face it, neither could my wife. Definitely not going to have my 9-year-old daughter inside there, was my dad. And after a conversation with the judge, my father put up his house for the first time to get me out of jail. And he did that because he knew not just because of that phone call, but the 2 years that I did in recovery inside that state prison that I just came from. So I pushed out my case about a year, and I went back in front of that federal judge and I took the plea bargain. I've never ever went to trial, and I never had enough for an attorney to really go to the box and start playing games. I figured like this: I didn't get in trouble, man. I just always paid my tab. That's basically how it works. You know what I mean? I did enough crap in the streets. I got picked up. Okay, let's figure out. All right, you can give me 20. All right, let's go to 8. Okay, you know how to play that game. Let's go to 6. Let's get to 4. Come on, man, give me something. Don't give me that 20. You know what I mean? And I ain't playing no games. I ain't snitching. I ain't doing none of that shit. I'm gonna do my time and give me a plea bargain for my guilty plea. So what happened was I was capped at 68 months. And sitting in front of that judge, capped at 68 months, I had an option. I could go with the U.S. attorney, or I could go with the judge's opinion, and I could possibly get probation. That wasn't even on my mind. How federal prison scheduling looks, you have 0 to 7, and then 0 all the way down to a million numbers this way. It comes in like that old multiplication table, and you find out how many months that you got. And basically, they have this probation eligible around the 0 and 1. And the 0 to 7 means how many times you've been arrested in your criminal history. And I should be past, I was like 7+. You know what I mean? I already been to state prison 3 times and been arrested all my life. So I wasn't even in probation eligible. But I know that my experience in jail, I'm not going to go with the U.S. attorney because he's trying to get me as a notch on his belt. So I might as well just go with the judge's opinion and just cut his ass out. So what I did is the night before, I wrote something to talk to the judge about, and it wasn't the best way to do 12 steps. I heard about a thing called a 5th step. And with a bottle of tequila and my daughter's alligator tears, it sounded just like a Catholic confessional, basically, to me. So I read this damn thing. I did my best to write that shit down, and I walked in on a relapse. And I even told her about that I was drinking tequila the night before, but I did come in sober. I did get some sleep, didn't do any drugs, but I basically sat in front of that judge and I told her about my life. I told her about the things the opportunities that I had. I didn't push anything on my parents. I didn't push anything on anybody else. The opportunities that my parents gave me, and I spoke plainly. And I was crackling, and you're sitting there in front of a judge and you got this big ass situation happening in front of you. All I basically asked her is if I can continue my recovery journey. I can go to the next wherever you send me. Let me grow. Let me figure out how I can do some through the mail college something. You know what I mean? Let me continue my journey. Even put me back in rehab if I have to. That was my dumb idea of drinking that tequila the night before, because now I had 2 years recovery time prior. I might as well drink some liquor, so now I'm a newcomer, right? That's how we think. Just stupidity right there. You know what I mean? So now I'm fresh. Now I deserve rehab again. You know what I mean? So with that dumb way of thinking, I sat there and I looked at that judge and I just basically just told her the truth and told her the real jackass that I've been through the years and the mistakes that I made. And I didn't apologize a lot. I just, I just took accountability. And when it was the judge's turn to speak, and this was sentencing, she basically, in my life experience, I've learned that they either start good and then they slay you, or they start bad and they slay you straight through. So, and that's always been a guilty plea. So I'm not going anywhere but handcuffed and going to the box, and I'm fully prepared from that. And, and I got my street clothes on, and I'm dressed nice for the first time on the outs instead of being on the end and doing this thing. And I'm fully prepared to go. So I kept my chin up, chest out, respect And I looked at that judge even through, and she started bad. So I thought I was done. But this is the first time that recovery worked for me, because she started stacking the good things that I did and started getting into it in the 3 years that I've done things. And by the time she was done, she said, "Mr. Hernandez, I deem it counterproductive to put you back in prison for all the work that you've done in recovery." Man, talking about tears and being floored, I thought I was gone. I thought it was done. There was no chance. And she made me probation eligible. She gave me 3-year supervised release. I already finished in that year ISP parole. I was on regular parole and I had no violations. But I didn't stop there. As soon as that lady let me out, I was a man of my word. And I had a few relapses in between that whole situation that got me to that date that I mentioned earlier. But I finished parole. I finished supervised release without a hitch. And from that chance that that woman gave me, I haven't returned to jail since. And that was 2009 when I was, or 2009, the last time that I was in jail. I haven't returned to any gangs since then. But when I finally, when my sponsor would say was my horse was dead and my ass was full of arrows, the last time that I used, the world really started opening up, and where that was a higher power. See, this whole thing in this journey while I was relapsing, I wasn't understanding anything because I had a real bad relationship with God. I knew exactly who he was, but excuse my language, I just didn't like him at the time. You know, when I was younger, I basically just said, "You stay in your lane, I'm gonna stay in mine." And you know, when you make that type of decision, which I'm sure all of you know, when you tell God to go to hell, you're gonna find hell on earth. You're gonna find it quick. And it took me to get myself into steps and really surrender to figure out, hey, I need to fix this fucking relationship and I need to fix it now. Or else I ain't gonna have a chance in hell. And man, when I first got sober, I ended up in the TC program again. But finding God and still being an institutionalized prick, got my ass kicked out of there. And ended up with the president and the CEO at his outpatient, and ended up in sober living. From that point, I had 2 months in recovery, and I ended up working for him at the desk, doing UAs and checking people in and doing things. You know, you're supposed to have a year in recovery to start in the field, but this man knew I didn't have nothing. And the way I needed, you know, get my license to pay for my sober living, he needed to give me some non-clinical work to get there going. And what I did was I just worked. I dug ditches, I delivered pizzas, I loaded trucks, and I worked for Chris. And I did 12 steps and lived at a sober living. And I did everything that I could to be in this industry. Because at the beginning, it wasn't about doing what I do today. I just needed free therapies, and I needed my license back, and I needed to be around a bunch of people that weren't getting loaded. You know what I mean? It was that simple. I didn't have any ideas to become what I've become today. I had none. I had no aspirations of getting married again. I had none of that. I could barely see my kid at the time. I had to go see my kid at my mom's house, and I could only see her for an hour at a time. And like hell, they would let me get in the car with her and take her off somewhere at that time. You know what I mean? And I just got into this thing, and just one day at a time, I started doing things. So to get to how I met Mikey and certain situations like that, through the United States, what they did is they used me kind of as a stigmatized situation device to go out and get these kids with insurance policies. But I learned about patient brokering. I knew that I wasn't that guy, and I didn't like that kind of shit. So basically what I did was I worked for these treatment centers, and I went and picked up people ethically all over the nation and went into places where these high conglomerate places were afraid to go. So I ended up in Boyle Heights, LA. I ended up in parts of you guys' state. I ended up in a lot of Florida, Patterson, New Jersey, you name it. and I'd just pick up a kid with a cigar in my lip. I was about 100 pounds heavier, and I'd go in and I'd be a wheezing heart attack, full of recovery, and trying to get this kid into the car and get him to a treatment center as quick as possible. You know what I mean? And what they did not know is I had an aptitude to learn things very quickly. So I got into business development, and that business development track ended up getting me closer to the CEOs of those companies, and I learned a lot about what this industry is about, and I got to see it forefront on a scope from all different types of treatment modalities, all different types of treatment centers. And I kept it real. I realized, and I tell my employees all the time, my employees are like family. Remember, what we do for a living is not our recovery. What I'm doing right now is my recovery. 12 steps is my recovery. If I forget about God and I exit God out, I know that's attributed to my recovery tools, and I got to reel myself in. I'm not about the money. With my life today, you couldn't have sold me that shit. Couldn't have sold me that shit. Today, I work in the judicial system. The guys, the stuff that I did for myself, that case management I did, I tried it out on one 19-year-old boy and got him out of federal prison. And in this house that we're in right now, I pay the mortgage where his mother bought this for us. Now it's a staff house. This was the first sober living, but this is now our hub where we run our 10 houses, our 10 recovery homes, and our treatment center that we have downtown. And it's all on Medicaid base, and we make sure that we get vouchers and we get everything that we can to get these people out and get them free and get them sober. And yeah, I'm just really honored, you know. And Mikey Flowers, man, he's been with me the whole time. He struggled. Thank you for loving it. So I love that kid like my own. You know, I tear up on that. That boy's wonderful. You know, and that's what it's about, right? It's about the newcomer. It's always about the newcomer. It's always about the struggling at it and recovering. You know, and that's still got that passion from that first day. You know what I mean? And that's me. That's what I do. I got a wonderful wife. I got my family back in. I got great employees. They're all running around here listening to me jaw jack right now. And they all, 98% of our employees, 99% of our employees, maybe a couple of therapists, they got 20, 30 years in recovery. So obviously when they're living in the recovery homes, we go from 0 to 100, and all of them have lived in the program, including myself. And we're all from 0 to executive, and we run this show together. And that's about the size of my story, guys.
I love you, Tomas.
Dumas, thank you so much, man. That's an awesome
Thank
story.
you. Yes.
I know people are gonna have a lot of questions, and I'll introduce Jensen. She's my co-founder of We Choose Recovery, and everyone else, you know, is our family. I have a couple things real quick before I turn it over to them. You know, one of the things that I struggled with whenever I first got sober, I'm only 5 months sober now, but you know, with my family, with all these people, it's driving me to want to do better and do more for more people. And kind of like you, I want to learn. But one of the things I had to learn quick in my recovery, I felt entitled, right? I felt entitled to my family to give me forgiveness within 2 months. You know, hey, I started a recovery group. Hey, I started this, and I'm starting a nonprofit. But you know, it was so humbling to realize, hey, look, you know, 20 years of addiction has nothing against, you know, 2 months. I mean, what does 2 months have against 20 years of addiction? And so, you know, how did you handle that whenever you first got sober, about, you know, trying to get your kids back? You know, my kids we have a lot of people, you know, a few people in this group, in this meeting right now that are trying to get their kids back, and they're doing everything right in life. And, you know, I try to, you know, explain to them, hey, you know, we're not entitled to get them back yet. You know, we've got to earn those things that we've destroyed.
Mm-hmm. To speak to getting my kids back, it was just earning. You know, kids are resilient, in my opinion. They will, they're always going to be forgiving on a lot of levels, man, because they love you so much. and they don't understand. And then they can hate you in the same sentence because of their environment and what they've been told and what they've experienced from you. And you just got to basically, in my opinion, roll with the punches. There's a lot of stuff that I ain't ever going to get back from a man. I used to be the almighty hero in her eyes, and that shine is kind of dulled to brass now. It's not that shiny gold that it used to be, and that's okay though. When I'm in a meeting, I don't talk about that I'm a superhero, great father. It talks about I lost that chance. I'm a better father, and I got to be able to accept that accountability. You know what I mean, and be able to be okay with that. But the best way I could be a father is taking care of myself and making sure one day at a time I do the next right thing. I'm not going to do the best things on earth, Eric. I'm not, man. It was hard. It was a test to all of us. Having Zoom meetings, doing things like that, being estranged from a lot of things, and my company blew up. And if it wasn't for a lot of my employees, a lot of people in this room here, I don't think I'd have made it through, man. It's and everybody's in recovery here. I don't even think my marriage would have survived. You know what I mean? If I didn't have my team. And I was very fortunate to have that situation there. But, to speak to the kids, man, you just gotta, I wish that was enough, right? To keep you sober. If I could do it for my kid, you know what I mean? If I could go get a job and just do it for my kid, and I don't understand how the hell my dad pulled that off. I needed 12 steps, man. I needed to figure out how to build a manual for myself. When you look into 12 steps, for me, what it did is the biggest things were like character defects. I talked about the 5. That was great. I got it off my chest, but I got to figure out how I'm going to tick. You know what I mean? I can manipulate 100 ways to get one action done. I could sell myself first. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to steal that shit straight out your pocket and get down the road. Probably in your car. You know what I mean? So with that being said, it taught me about who I am. My sponsor tells me one thing, Eric, it's from head to heart to hand. I found God in the tip of a pin more than I ever thought I would in my life. That step work guy I got a relationship with. I've thought I've lost it. I've had anxiety. I've got pissed off it. I've thrown it across the room. I got tear marks on it. I got blood marks on it from working from some shit ass job that had my hands cut, and I just needed to take a break to go ahead and keep on writing step work. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of my answer. I'm real excited to get to know you, Eric. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just knowing me and knowing how to be a better person one day at a time. The rest took care of itself. Anything that happens with suicide, all that kind of stuff, they got to call 911. There's protocol. But what's great with a recovery coach is I can meet you, Eric, at Starbucks at 3 a.m. if your ass is falling. You know what I mean? I could go to your home. I could go to different places to help you out. And that's what we love about it. What we call our sober coaches, we call them navigators. We got over 10 navigators in the system now since Mikey's been around. We got a lot of people that's working hand in hand with people to make sure that they can get where they need to be. And also the biggest thing about it is having them find out what their recovery is. When you're looking at a participant group, when you're looking at, they're the expert. Tell me what you need. How can I help you get that? And it's also what's great about us with lived experience. We are the best hustlers on earth. On a positive, proactive action, he can figure out what that person needs quicker than they can when they're lost in the weeds if his mind's clear enough. And that's the purpose of a sober coach. Let's get that action going. Let's get that person with purpose, love, and respect at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and making sure that they get to the right place. And once you stack up enough recovery currency and enough goals, why look back? You don't go and drive a Buick, turn it in at a used car lot, get this brand new nice ride, then drive by that Buick and then just want to go pick that son of a bitch back up, start driving it again, right? So let's just stay in that new car and just keep on going forward. I would suggest if you're doing this for lived experience through family members, getting to Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, figure out what it takes and how we tick. You know, really look at that perspective on that. You know, a recovery coach, you find your niche. Like all my coaches got a different aspect of how they approach things. You just got to find your feel and go with it. You know, some recovery coaches work with families. You know what I mean? Mothers and fathers out there. Some work with different populations.